Every second we're here is a gift. It's just such a privilege to be loving our animals and engaging in work we love and loving the people we love and serving the communities that we can. What your heart tells you, that's like your ultimate compass.
This is Popprint, an animal rescue community, episode 26, and the final episode of Greyhound Week, a week of episodes dedicated to greyhounds. I'm Nancy Rhee.
I'm Harold Rhee. Today's guest is the artist Nina Huang, author of the children's book My Apollo. Today she shares stories of her two greyhounds, Apollo and Pebbles. We also have a conversation on a number of topics: spirituality, the creative process, and the artist's life, which is part of an upcoming book she's working on called The Enlightened Creator, rooted and inspired by Taoism.
If you want to learn more about Nina Huang and see some photos of Nina, Apollo, and Pebbles, go to our show notes at thisispopprint.com/26. That's the number 26.
I didn't, fully commit to a life in the arts until I was like 2.5 years ago.
What happened?
I was in graduate school. I was doing a PhD in sociology at Harvard. So I was living in Cambridge at the time. I was just entering the dissertation phase, which required, a lot of groundwork and research and preparing for that process to begin. And I just didn't have any joy for it. I didn't have any passion for it. I felt like I was just doing it because it was the right thing to do, to finish something you started. Meanwhile, I was painting a lot, and really feeling very drawn to making a creative life, doing what I love to do and following that inspiration versus this other path that felt like I was committed to it and my dad was happy about it. It was kind of like a fork in the road, situation. My mental health was declining. I was just anxious and unhappy. And quite honestly, I think I was depressed because I wasn't channeling my energy the way that, my heart wanted to. And that was when I adopted Apollo. Actually was like right at the very bottom, I say, in my journey at Harvard. I was just racking my brain trying to figure out how I was going to pursue my art and finish a PhD. And I was like, no, I can make everybody happy. Like, that's possible. And it wasn't. And I have been doing research about greyhounds and reading about, their unique life journey and know that they were all racers, and after they retire from that career, they get adopted into homes. And there's a process of rehabilitation for them, but they're very gentle, very sweet dogs, just very great companions. And I just always wanted to rescue a greyhound. And one day, like one afternoon, I was just feeling really sad. And my partner at the time said, why don't we just go to the greyhound rescue place and we can just check them out. Like, we don't have to bring one home or anything, but I think that might make you feel better. And so we went that day and came back with Apollo, of course.
What made your partner think that adopting a dog would help?
Well, I was talking about wanting to have a dog for the longest time and just not allowing myself to do that. The gift that Apollo was really unbeknownst to me until I brought him home and started spending time with him. And he was like my first dog as an adult. I always grew up with dogs and my family loved dogs, but I had never taken on, another life as my primary responsibility. So it was just totally a first. I think that my partner just felt like it was the time. Our schedules were flexible and we would have time to spend with Apollo. And probably it would do me a lot of good.
Why'd you end up even signing up for this program at Harvard? Why at the time were you so passionate about it?
I loved sociology when I was in college, undergrad. I took my first 101 sociology and immediately felt this is the kind of knowledge I want, is to study and learn about how society is organized. And I really excelled at academia when I was an undergrad. But art was always there. I wanted to go to art school after high school and didn't feel like it was a viable career pursuit. Didn't receive any encouragement from my family, just a starving artist stereotype. And my dad came from a time of real poverty, in Taiwan. He had to work really hard to just put food on the table. When I started, I primarily was a painter, and I did pet portraits actually for the first year and a half of, starting the art studio business, and just solely did commissions, and then wrote and published My Apollo, and then did pet portraits for a bit longer, started working on larger scale paintings on my own. Now I'm sort of in the middle of writing my second book, which is a book on spirituality and creativity based on Taoist principles. It's the thing that I am nurturing right now. It's where most of my creative focus is.
How long have you had Apollo? What makes Apollo special for you?
I love Apollo so much. When I adopted him back in Boston, I was so sad, and I was so lost and so confused about what I wanted to do. And Apollo was so clueless because he had no idea about life outside of the racing track and the kennel, life. So I was spending a lot of time with him and watching him learn everything for the first time, like toys and stairs and the couch and the bed and walking on the trail, and even really walking on a leash. He only had very limited exposure to that prior to coming home with us. Other dogs, that's totally new for him. And cars, just everything you can think of was this brand new experience to him. He was just such a trooper. He was so willing. You can tell that he was afraid, of course. Any creature would be afraid to be in these totally unknown situations, but he trusted me. I just felt like the process of building the trust and, seeing him get better every day and becoming more confident and playful and figuring out little tricks that really help him come along. We discovered that labs were just so great for him. When he had a play date with them, he would pick up so many new things, like just jumping and fetching and playing with the toy. It's just a really beautiful experience. I'm sure you and Nancy know what I'm talking about when foster animals and you kind of get to be the first one to watch them open their hearts, start to feel loved and comforted, and then their personality really comes through. And you just feel so rewarded for having been through that with him. He's funny too, he has his own personality. He's goofy and he's such a mama's boy. I adopted Pebbles. I think it's been almost 2 years now. Even though Pebbles went through a similar process, when she came home with me, she also didn't know about cars and stairs and toys and treats, and that's all very similar. But after Pebbles was exposed to all these different things, she's a much more independent personality a lot of the times. Apollo is just more clingy, even though, I don't know, Pebbles is clingy too. It's hard to say. I love taking care of them. I love brushing their teeth. I love clipping their nails. I love walking them. I love I like planning vacations around how to give them the most play to the beach or the forest, because that's how you get rewarded.
I like that.
It gives to you what you give to it. I think that's kind of a beautiful equilibrium. And I feel it's the same way with art. Somebody will say, painting takes so long. How do you even have the patience to paint? How do you spend so many hours waiting for something to happen little by little? It's so frustrating. But to me, that's dedication. You're humbled before this thing you love about life. You give yourself to it. And in that act of giving yourself to something, that's when it gives to you.
So your first book, My Apollo,
Yeah.
is a wonderful children's story.
Well, I want to hear about why it made you cry every time.
Sure. So I'll tell the audience my impressions. It is a children's book, right? It's maybe 20 pages long, beautifully illustrated.
Oh, thanks.
Deceptively simple story, right? It starts with a boy's journey in really just a few pages. He essentially discovers what it means to take care of a dog. And I think in a way, he discovers something about himself. He discovers something about, without giving too much away, about his broken family, right? That's sort of like the genesis, or at least the first page of the book.
The protagonist starts at kind of like the bottom,
Right.
in terms of his emotional state. The rescue dog also arrives in the story in the same place. And the story is really about the two of them helping each other in bonding, in the boy learning how to take care of the rescue dog and help rehabilitate him, facilitate, in the process of healing and offering that to the animal.
Right.
That process transformed him. In my mind, it was always an uplifting story, Harold, but then I get so much feedback about people crying right from the beginning and then at the end again.
Right. Well, I guess it brings up the question, why is human suffering, animal suffering, while it's so horrible, on the other hand, it makes for great art in such a weird way?
The answer is sort of multi-layered, but I definitely resonated with the protagonist's emotional state at that age. Like when I was around that age, I lost my mom to a stroke, and there was a lot of just turbulence and chaos, neglect, and abuse. Like my childhood was all over the place, and there was a lot of suffering, if I have to be totally, transparent as I am. I was a really sad child, and that happens. We are just so much more sensitive and vulnerable and emotional than I think we allow ourselves to admit so much of the time. And I think suffering is universal. It is something of an experience that no matter who you are and what walk of life you're from, you can't leave life being untouched by that, untouched by loss or grief or disappointment or hurt and pain. It does make great art because, that's what completes the experience of being alive. It's all of it.
How old were you when your mother passed away?
I was 8, so I believe I was Briar's age in the book, yeah.
Wow. One of the cool things about My Apollo is that you actually started it through crowdsourcing, correct?
Yes.
What did you think about the experience? Would you do it again? And if so, what would you change?
I would definitely do it again. So I use Kickstarter as my platform to raise funding to publish the book. I had a really great experience with it. People were extremely supportive. I connected with a lot of people that I really never would have connected with if it wasn't for the campaign. Because of the campaign, I sent out press releases about My Apollo and got really quite a bit of press coverage about the book prior to it even being published. I learned a lot about marketing because I was just learning on the job. Trying to do that and trying to see what works and what doesn't. I would really recommend it for creative people, especially if you're down to learn. It's going to be very stressful. There will be surprises along the way. But I think overall, the kind of feeling that I got was a sense of connection with an audience. And that feeling is very exciting for someone like me at the time, who really hasn't had that sort of connection.
If you were going to paint a picture of your childhood, what would it look like?
My mom was just a troubled person. Before she passed away, she was an addict, and I don't have that many memories of her. There was a lot of just neglect and absence of parental anything. And my dad was trying to make money because we were so poor and living in like relatives' places and not feeling like we have any ground. And my dad was working really hard to change that. And, he was also very absent because he had to do that. But I did grow up with my older sister and a younger brother, and we were best friends, took care of each other, fed each other. My sister and I changed my brother's diapers when he was little, and we like ate junk food because we didn't have other types of food in our house. It was wild. That's how I would describe it. It was a wild, very much no rules, no parents, no guidance kind of environment.
What's maybe the best advice you've ever been given, or the best advice that you try to live by?
I love that question because I think about that a lot, especially as I'm working on the second book. I feel like staying true to my authenticity and my truth. And even when it's not what other people would prefer you to believe or act or choose. Growing up and being socialized and conditioned to fit in and to adopt, the ideas and norms of other people, your mind gets so clustered with like, what's the right thing? Like, what would other people approve of? What would other people think of me if I do this or that? Deliberately put attention toward developing that sort of awareness, like meditating and, reflecting deeply on purpose, calming my mind and relaxing myself until I can hear my own guidance, my own spiritual truth. Every second we're here is a gift. It's just such a privilege to be loving our animals and engaging in work we love and loving the people we love and serving the communities that we can. What your heart tells you, that's like your ultimate compass.
With your second book, can you tell us a little bit more about the direction of that book? Is it a children's book? Is it an adult book?
It's a book for adults in homage to the Taoist text. It's called the Tao Te Ching, not that it's going to be compared to it. I wanted to really kind of boil down the essence of what I learned about creativity and really owning your creative power and flowing fully with the energy that you have come with. I think that my book provides some very clear and concise spiritual principles in a way that I hope is supportive and uplifting. The 81 short chapters is going to be the book, and then the book is going to have a deck of companion cards that I'm going to illustrate in watercolor with different messages that also support sort of what the book is trying to accomplish.
What's the working title of the book, and realistically, when do you think you'll complete it?
The working title is called The Enlightened Creator. I really, really want to see this book out in the world in 2016, and I fully expect that I will.
What's the best way to reach you? Online?
Yeah, so I'm at ninahuangart.com, and you can also get copies of my Apollo on there that I sign.
If anybody was interested in greyhounds, what's the coolest thing about fostering or adopting a greyhound?
Oh, there's so many cool things about them. People think that they're very energetic, but they're not. They're actually couch potatoes. They love sleeping. They are actually extremely graceful and gentle. So you might think that you need a lot of space to foster a greyhound, but you actually don't. They are very happy in not a huge space. Like if you have a condo and an apartment, a greyhound is actually a legitimate choice for you. They do like to run fast, but they also love just walking. If you give them a long walk or 2 short walks in a day, they're extremely tired. They will sleep, most of the day. And they're just very gentle and very sweet and very loving. Like, honestly, my sister has a chocolate lab and my brother has a Rottweiler. My family grew up with a Maltese. We had Dalmatians. These dogs are just so easy. They're not loud. They are so graceful, and I love them. I think one of the coolest things that you get to do as a foster parent or, someone who just rescues them and brings them home is you get to experience them like come into their own personality little by little, and that is really freaking cool.
Right.
And
Awesome.
you get to be kind of like the safe harbor for them. They get to explore and experience the world because they have you, and you get to show them how awesome the world is outside of the racing track. Like, yeah, playing with other dogs. They're just really fantastic dogs.
Thanks to Nina Huang, in addition to Apollo and Pebbles, for sharing her story. And we want to say thank you to our wonderful guests who made up Greyhound Week: Nina Huang, Lucienne Bouvier, Stu Homer, and Joan Chaplick. Thank you for making this a wonderful week dedicated to greyhounds. If you want to learn more about Nina Huang, take a look at her beautiful art, and find out ways to get an autographed copy of My Apollo, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/26. If you want to look up me or Nancy on social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Look for This Is Paw Print, all one word. You can also look me up on Facebook, Harold Ree. I promise I don't bite, and all my vaccinations are up to date. If you want to listen to more episodes of Paw Print, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher, in addition to Overcast, a podcast app for iPhones. Finally, we just want to say thank you to all of you, our listeners out there, for sharing your stories. And we want to welcome our listeners from Spokane, Washington, Scottsdale, Arizona, as well as Telemark, Norway. You spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.
Woohoo!